Hi everyone. In an earlier video, we've discussed the case of Salomon and Salomon, and in that video, we only looked at the background leading to the case as well as the facts involved in the case. In this video, we're going to discuss the main facts which led to the issue and also, of course, the issue itself which led to the case. Okay, so in addition to the facts that I've already told you, you also need to know another important fact, which is that Mr. Salomon was also the managing director of the company. Okay, what happened next is that things did not go so well for Mr. Salomon and his business. That is, the business did not really go as well as it expected to. And since the business did not succeed, what happened is that almost within a year, the company, that is Mr. Salomon's company, was placed in insolvent liquidation. And for now, if you don't know what insolvent liquidation means, just remember that the company was placed in liquidation, and when a company is placed in liquidation and it does not have enough money to pay off its debts, that is, it does not have enough money to pay off its liabilities, to settle and satisfy those liabilities, then this kind of situation is termed as insolvent liquidation. Okay, so since the company was now placed in liquidation, a liquidator was appointed, and this liquidator essentially plays the role of selling off the company's assets and distributing those proceeds, that is the money gained from selling off the assets, to those to whom the company owes money, that is all of those people who had lent money to the company are going to be able to get some of that money back, depending on, of course, how much assets the company has. And of course, this also means that some of these people are not going to get their money back, right? Because the company may not have enough assets in order to satisfy the claims of all of the creditors, that is, of all of the people who have lent money to the company. And well, this is precisely what happened in this particular case. And what happened is that the liquidator, who was appointed by the court in order to carry out the liquidation proceedings, was trying to argue basically that the company that was set up by Mr. Salomon was not really a company, but was instead a sham, or you could say an agent for Mr. Salomon. And the liquidator tried to essentially argue that Mr. Salomon was trying to hide behind the company, and he should not be allowed to do so. Why? Because in a sense, since he was the major shareholder, remember I had told you that 20,001 shares in the company were held solely by Mr. Salomon alone, and the remaining family members were just holding one share each. And Mr. Salomon, then you can see, is that was also, by the way, the managing director of the company. So you can see what the liquidator was trying to point out was that the company was basically just a facade behind which Mr. Salomon is now trying to hide. But in reality, what has actually happened is that this company is still not much different from the sole trading business that Mr. Salomon was carrying out earlier before creating this company, before forming this company. So the liquidator was trying to argue that this company is not a real company, the way a company is intended to perform, the way a company is intended to be formed. And the issue that we are going to look at shortly is basically that the court had now to decide whether Mr. Salomon's company was actually a sham. That is, was the liquidator correct in arguing that the company was indeed a sham and not a real company in the true sense of the word? And secondly, and other than this issue, obviously, because if the company is a sham and not a company in the way a company is intended to be, then in that situation, the related issue that arises is, was Mr. Salomon now going to be held personally liable for the remaining debts of the company? Why? Because like I was saying earlier, that this is basically what happened in this case. That is, the company found itself in a situation where it was not able to pay off all of the debts that the company had to pay off. So in this kind of situation, the liquidator, and obviously those creditors who had lent money to the company and were now in the position of unsecured creditors, who were pretty sure that they were not going to get their money back unless Mr. Salomon was going to be held personally liable for the company's debts. So I repeat that these were basically the facts that led to the issue, that is, the facts leading to the issue, and the issue can be summed up as just two basic issues. The first one is, was the company a mere sham, as the liquidator was arguing? Number two, was Mr. Salomon personally liable for the debts of the company or not? And as you can probably see, that these two issues are intricately interconnected. Why? Because the first issue, that is whether this was really a company or not, and by the way, in case you don't know what sham means, then let me just very quickly explain that word. So a sham is something that is not true in a sense, and basically you're trying to hold out something as true when in reality it is not. So for example, an advertisement of a product, let's say gold or diamond, is put up when in reality the product is not really gold or a diamond product, but is instead a piece of fake jewelry. And in this kind of example, you can see that you're trying to hold out and advertise something as real gold or real diamond when actually it's not, when actually it is fake. So a sham is something that is basically trying to hold out something as true when in fact it is something that is not true, it is something that is false. So if you're trying to hold out something as real when in fact it is not real, that situation is basically described as a sham. And a sham is something that is not legally permissible. Why? Because you're trying to deceive people through your actions. Okay, so I hope the meaning of sham is clear to you. Moving on, I was saying that the issues boil down to two main issues. That is, number one, was the company a mere sham? Number two, was Mr. Salomon personally liable for the debts of the company? And like I was saying, these two issues are intricately interconnected. Why? Because the answer to the first issue is basically going to determine the answer to the second issue. And I hope that you can see why. Well, because if the company is a mere sham and not really a company, then obviously Mr. Salomon is definitely not going to be able to hide behind the pretext of a company, and he will be held personally liable for the debts of the company. However, if the company is really a company and not a sham, then in that situation, Mr. Salomon will not be held personally liable for the debts of the company. I hope the issue is clear to you. In the next video, I will explain the decision arrived at by the courts in this case.